guys, it's Kayla. Today I wanted to talk a little bit about Our Dark Duet by Victoria Schwab. I read this book a month ago, so I'm a month out, and I just kind of wanted to go through the book and talk about the main plot points, some things I didn't like, some things that are kind of up to interpretation. I did a video for this for the Savage song, and so I figured I would complete the duology and do another video. Also, I took 8 pages of notes on it, and it's like a half notebook, but still, I've never done that many pages for it, so I figured I might as well go through my notes and see what there is to talk about, see what I wrote down, like everything that happened. So in these books, basic premise, if you don't know by now, which I'm sure you do, it's the United States, a dystopian United States, set in the future sometime. Main United States is divided into 10 different territories, where one of these territories right in the middle has a phenomenon happening where different types of murders create monsters. And there's different types of monsters, and there's a power struggle on what to do and how to be safe within the city. And that's about it. That's the first book. In the second book, Our Dark Duet picks up right where the Savage song leaves, which is nice. So if you haven't read Our Dark Duet, I recommend you stop so you won't get spoiled for the things. Okay, so I'm glad that it picked up right where we left off a little bit, and then it's obviously 6 months later. Kate's in the neighboring territory, which I loved. I was super excited to hear about what life is like there. There was the glimpse of that there may be new monsters. We don't know what type in the territory, and it turns out that that's true. So that was I really like that. So there's new monsters that eats hearts, and I like that the monsters, because we don't really know much about the phenomenon, but it is commented on throughout both books that the monsters reflect the people that cause the monsters, and then the people kind of reflect their territory. And so in Prosperity, like with the name suggests, the people in the city are money hungry, and so the monsters created eat hearts. I thought that was really cool, that there was just mainly that one type of monster, whereas in Verity there's the 3 monsters. I love the introduction to the wardens, Kate's new friends, the hackers. That was so cool. I was trying to pay attention to them in the beginning because I just had a feeling that they would follow her over into Verity, and that never happened. I was so disappointed that we just get introduced to them, and I'm so excited that Kate has friends, and that's it. Like, later on she creates these emails that she doesn't send because she doesn't have service in Verity. But I was thinking, well, they're hackers, so maybe like they can hack into the system somehow and see them, or I thought there was going to be some kind of communication where they would come and follow her and try to help her, especially since she gave them the information on how to kill a monster, how to do these things. I thought that they would kind of train up and then they would come over, and that never happened. So I didn't like that we had this big introduction to these people, and it was just like it didn't go anywhere. Okay, so going into Alice and Sloane, I love, and I didn't pick up on this at the end of the book, that the monster that Kate creates from killing the messenger, she calls herself Alice, and I didn't click that that's Kate's mom. But it's cool that Alice is basically looks just like Kate and is kind of like Kate but just a monster version, and then Sloane is revealed that he kind of looks like Harker, and so we have Alice and Sloane having this like father-daughter relationship as monsters, living together, all the things that they do, mirroring Kate and her dad. And I just thought that was so cool. I thought it was funny, kind of like Alice was like, even though she was horrible, she was kind of like a comic relief at the same time. So I really liked that. I really liked that they talked more about the monsters catalysts, go into how these monsters look, how they act, how their personality is, depending on the murder, I guess. I liked all that information. I wish there was a little bit more, but you just kind of had to draw the lines together. We have the fangs, which are like the humans that are like trying to stay alive, however they're horrible humans that are helping out the Corsai, and they wear like the chains around their necks, and which is cool, but for me it felt a little weird just because this is like North City, which used to be just like people that had the money because they could pay Harker for their safety. I think just the type of people that are is just the people that will survive at any cost. So the first book, they paid their money to have their safety, to have their normal lives, and when that fell, when Harker died, well shit, now what do? So instead of crossing the border, they, you know, surrender to Sloane and be like their human army to survive, so that they don't get killed. They will kill other people in the defense of the Corsai. So that was pretty interesting. At first I felt a little disconnect from it, but it's not that they're just these rich people, it's that they're these people that will survive and do whatever it takes to survive. Okay, so there's a new Sunai, which I was super excited about in Verity, Sorrow, who is essentially like, genderless. I just loved how like Sorrow was just so middle ground, and just kind of the personality of Sorrow was very kind of vanilla, and I imagine Sorrow sounding like monotone and just, you know, no personality, just like kind of robotic. I'm supposed to reap these souls, there's no exceptions. And then we have August, who is conflicting inside about reaping souls that are bad, but they have sought out forgiveness. And so I thought that was really interesting, is that when August was reaping the souls of the people that would pass over, he would check their souls, and there'd always be like one or two that he'd have to reap. And it was sad because he'd reap like parents, and they're like, well, he sought out forgiveness, and he would give him a chance. So like when they started like confessing, the one mother just said like, oh, I'll do it again if I had the chance or whatever. So obviously he felt like that person would have done it again, would have killed again. So that's why he reaped her soul. But I like that there was that conversation, like that discussion about humanity, how you're a sinner, are you always a sinner, or do you seek out forgiveness? What constitutes forgiveness? They didn't really go into that, because I would think that like kind of how later on where the souls are red and white after they were like possessed by the silver-eyed monster, I would think that, say I killed someone and I sought out forgiveness like for 10 years, I was doing whatever, that maybe my soul might not be red, but it might be like pink. I wish there was that kind of discussion of where there was, I mean, it was brought up, like that topic was brought up. It didn't really go there because they didn't have the people that applied to. So I don't know if that just meant like you're forever tarnished, you're forever you have a broken soul, you have a bad soul, you're going to be reaped from these monsters. I would have liked to see a little bit more of that, or a little bit variety, a little bit more gray area, besides just when it came to the silver-eyed monster. Okay, so the silver-eyed monster. This was super interesting. So essentially the silver-eyed monster is another monster that was created in Prosperity and then traveled over to Verity because they learned about the monsters and it was interested, or it was seeking out all the chaos. So it's like a chaos eater. They later figure it out. And so this monster was first talked about, I thought, like, because it was in Kate's head, but Kate didn't turn. Because like they talked about how it's like a virus, so like the monster was infecting all these people in this restaurant, and they turned on each other and started killing each other. And the monster would feed off of that chaos, that energy. But Kate saw it and she didn't turn, and then she also didn't affect people. But that was never explained why. So that kind of bugged me. I was like, well, why is she immune to it where anyone else did turn? So I don't know if it's because she had a red soul and everybody else were white-souled people that turned, because when the silver-eyed monster goes into Prosperity and goes into the encampment and everyone turns, and towards the end of the book they have red and white souls. But I don't know, that was never talked about, so I found that like oh, well, it's just convenient that Kate is carrying the monster, carrying a piece of the monster, survived it, but like it doesn't make sense why she like just didn't turn where everyone else could. So I don't know. Like she was like suppressing it. It's like she was strong enough to like suppress the desires to do bad things. So I don't know, I guess she was just stronger than these other people, or she like kind of knew what to expect. Like she's been killing monsters and knows about monsters, where other people didn't think monsters exist. They just thought it was a bad rumor going around, especially since they're in prosperity, not verity. And it's never really talked about what catalyst formed the silver-eyed monster, or at least I didn't pick up on it. There was like a bombing that had killed like 5 people, so it wasn't like a mass murder like as large as what created the tsunami in Verity. So I don't know if that's kind of what created it, or if it just didn't have a catalyst, since it was very shadowy and didn't have a form unless it fed on a lot of chaos, if it just kind of appeared. So I don't know, what do you guys think? Especially since there's so much talk about catalysts in this book, whether it was personal catalysts for the tsunami or just general catalysts for the different types of monsters. There's a lot of talk about that, but it was never really mentioned what made the silver-eyed monster come to be. In all places, like if anything, you would think it would arise in Verity originally, because there's all this killing and chaos happening, but it doesn't. It just shows up in Prosperity, where there's just this one type of monster just starting out, because it's, you know, still suppressed by the news, and it shows up in that territory. Okay, so with silver-eyed monster, the mirrored-eyed monster, I picked up on the origin story on Frozen. If you watch Once Upon a Time, they had like a Frozen arc, and it's from like an old fairy tale about how there is this mirror, and it was like a cursed mirror, and the mirror is shattered, and all the little slivers of the mirror go into everybody's eyes, and it makes them mean and, you know, want to hurt people, they don't feel love, all this stuff, and that's kind of like what the silver-eyed monster does. And so it has these mirrored eyes. You look into its mirrored eyes, and then it kind of comes in, like it comes into you, I guess, and it makes you want to hurt, it makes you angry, it makes you have this void. And I don't know, I kind of picked up on that just because I like that story arc from Once Upon a Time, and I liked how that kind of mirrored that monster. And so since Kate has the monster suppressed in her, or at least like a piece of the monster suppressed in her, she could go in and see through its eyes, which helped later on. That was pretty interesting. I was assuming that she was going to be the one, because she said that she saw in it that it was trying to get to Verity, and I thought that she was going to carry it into Verity. So her wanting to leave and go to Verity was going to be her bringing that monster into Verity, but that's not really how it happened. I guess it did just travel on its own. She just kind of had a mirror piece. She just had like a piece of that monster still in her. Okay, I remember thinking like, okay, so with Verity, with the phenomenon happening in Verity, they had it to where like no one could leave, and so you couldn't go in and out of Verity. And I remember thinking like, how messed up is that? Like there's these monsters, and like instead of letting the people out, they wanted to just, you know, leave them there and just wish them good luck against these monsters. I mean, I get it, because like with dystopians, like, you know, they want to keep the chaos in the bubble, and they just kind of forget about it or whatever. I'm surprised there wasn't also like any kind of like national, or any kind of like mad scientist like trying to like study these monsters. I'm surprised like that didn't really happen. It was kind of hinted that like Harker was kind of doing that with his monsters, like seeing kind of how they work, but like not so much in like the typical fashion you see in movies, where like there's always the scientific team trying to dissect and analyze what's happening. But I mean, I get it, because like the humans are the catalyst for these monsters. So if you just let these humans out, you don't know if they're going to create these monsters and it's going to spread through all these territories, or if it's just this phenomenon that's happening in this specific land area. I mean, obviously it did spread, but in a different way. We don't really know why it's happening or why it's spreading. I would argue it's contained just because the monsters kind of reflect the city and the people within the city. I just remember thinking that was just kind of messed up. I thought it was really smart. So Alice and her like Malachi, I've been saying Corsai, I've been meaning Malachi army, like pierces their ears or like shoves the thing through their ears so that they can't hear, and so they can't be affected by the Sunai songs. I thought that was really smart. Very kind of gruesome, and definitely something Alice would do. I thought that was really interesting. Okay, so let's talk about like August and having Leo. So obviously I kind of suspected something would be kind of weird because I didn't know, and I don't think anyone really knew, that you could like reap another monster's soul. And so when August reaped Leo's soul, throughout the second novel, August like hears Leo in his head. So we don't know if it's like he feels guilty and he's just kind of hearing what Leo would say in the situation, or if he's like he reaped his soul and he's like physically hearing Leo in him because Leo is a part of him. It kind of turns out that it is the latter, pretty much, but I don't know. I thought it made sense. I didn't love that whole plot point, but I like that it did, you know, toy with August, and it was kind of a way of having Leo still here with him not actually be here. Like, it was kind of like a scapegoat, like Leo dies, but like he's still around because he's within August. Okay, and Ilsa. Okay, so first off, I just want to say, spoiled on Ilsa's death. I listened to this on audiobook, so there's something about me liking to like see characters' names and certain like towns or certain things. I just like seeing the name visually, and so that's kind of what starts me taking notes. And I would hear Ilsa and I was like, Ilsa, like how do you spell Ilsa? So I remember just googling Ilsa, this Savage song, and the first thing that popped up was, it said Ilsa and it said like status deceased, and I was like, what? And that was back in this Savage song. So when she died in this Savage song, and she really wasn't dead, she just had her like throat cut, I was like, oh, okay, yay. So I was surprised because I kind of thought, oh yeah, she's dead. So when it turned out she wasn't dead, I was really surprised, but then I was like, well, wait, that article said that she's deceased. So going into the second one, I kind of had a feeling that she was gonna die. But what bugged me is that, okay, Ilsa can't sing, so she can't reap, so she can't feed. So how is she surviving? So I was like, how is she surviving these 6+ months? I mean, I'm not sure how long, but it seemed like August would kind of struggle if he wasn't reaping. So yeah, moral of the story is be careful when you Google character names while you're reading an audiobook, because spoilers. Okay, so getting to the meat potatoes, like the end of the book, I have here that I like the strategy that Sloane had to bring them into like Harker's building, to like bring the war there or whatever. And then while they were traveling over there, he went underground and took the silver-eyed monster into the FTF camp. Didn't really see that coming. Not that it was like, you know, a plot twist or anything, but I just didn't really... That was a good move on his part, good strategy. I have here that August and Ilsa killed Sloane, I guess with their music or whatever, I don't remember. I don't remember how. I have here too that like Sloane like got a taste for like Kate's blood, and he said like it didn't taste good. So I don't know if this is because Kate had part of the monster like in her. So if he was kind of like tasting the monster, because he's a Malachi, which is kind of like a vampire, so you would think he would like her blood. So I don't know what that comment hinting at. Okay, and I love that like August was about to go dark when they went back to the FTF camp to save everybody, Sorrow kind of came to the rescue and started playing their music, flute or whatever they play, on the sounds, like on the sound speaker, and kind of like soothed August. I thought that was awesome, especially since Sorrow, like I said, was just kind of like robotic and just very like middle ground throughout the whole book, just kind of like not unlikable, but just kind of meh. Okay, so when Elsa finally did die, like Elsa went dark, grabbed the silver-eyed monster and like killed it and reaped it, and then she cracked and kind of like turned to dust. I'm assuming that that kind of happened because she hasn't been reaping, so I think she was good for like 6+ months, and then that was kind of like, you know, she used up all of her energy, she hasn't been reaping, and so I'm guessing that's kind of why she died. Super sad, especially later on when like Allegro the cat was like pawing at her door. That like broke my heart, like so sad. So yeah, then when the silver-eyed monster died, all the kind of like the fragments within the people died with it, so everyone kind of stopped fighting, and Kate lost that piece of the monster within her as well. I love that like Alice and Kate kind of like killed each other. So like Alice kind of like gouged at Kate's heart, and Kate pierced Alice. And I like that Kate died. Not that I didn't like her as a character, but I like that this book went there, because a lot of the times, especially in like YA, you kind of go in expecting, well, everyone's probably gonna survive. There's might be a couple side characters that'll die, but Kate's a main character and she died, and I like that. I liked that there was that possibility. Well, she was injured, severely injured by Alice, and then August reaped her soul in the hopes that she would be with him, and you know, he does hear her voice later, so that's, you know, kind of obnoxious and sweet. I also didn't mention like that kiss between August and Kate. I was kind of like, really, we're gonna go there? But it's kind of realistic if you think of like friends. You become so close, and feelings kind of, you know, you go through something, like you're going through something, plus you're good friends, feelings happen, and so I get it. And I love that like they couldn't really be together because he was like reaping her soul, like bringing her soul to the surface. And then like afterwards, like she started laughing. So I like that, because that was kind of like realistic if you've ever like tried to kiss a friend or whatever. I liked that. I thought it was funny, especially since like they started to kiss. I was like, really? And then I also liked how the story kind of like it ended, but like, because I was kind of thinking that maybe they were gonna end it where like the monsters were kind of gone and done and whatever, and it didn't end that way. It just kind of ended where, okay, Sloane's dead, so the city of Verity is probably going to go back under rule of Henry Flynn, and hopefully they can come back, the monsters, like, but everything is still there, like nothing is woohoo, it's just Sloane's dead and Alice is dead, but there still could be, just like with any other kind of war, you can kill the leader, but you can't kill an idea. So if these monsters still want to come into power, they still very well can happen. And if we get one mirrored-eyed monster, like we don't know what caused that, so what's to prevent more from being created? So even though I don't think this is going to expand from just a duology, I definitely foresee companion novels, maybe different territories or something in the future happening, just because it does leave off open-ended. It doesn't tie everything up in a nice bow, which is nice, but at the same time, for a duology, it's kind of like, well, where do we go from here? But I think it's just kind of alluding to that, like, this is kind of the new norm, this is the new life. It's not just a phenomenon anymore, it is the way things are. So I think it'd be cool, like, I don't know, like the whole, like, do monsters have rights? And like, if monsters are gonna be a part of society now, like that whole thing. Are monsters people? Like, do they have equal rights? Stuff like that. Like, that'd be kind of interesting, I guess. But now that I read this back in October, so now that I'm like a month out of it, even soon after I finished it, I was kind of like separating myself from the book. And it was, I gave it 4 stars. It was, I do feel like it's a good solid story. However, I wasn't like engrossed with it. I wasn't obsessed. I wasn't connected, super connected with any of the characters. So that was kind of disappointing, just because like that having a good story, good characters, plus being like addicted and engrossed in the story and the world is all fun, is all like part of like the enjoyment of reading, at least for me. So I didn't have that experience with either of these books. However, I do still feel like it's a good, solid story, great characters. So, I don't know. Not a favorite. I do recommend people read it. I don't think it's anything you need to pick up ASAP, but they are good stories and have me kind of asking questions, and it does talk about, you know, souls and good and evil and monster versus human, and I thought that whole idea and that whole plot arc was very interesting throughout the duology. Okay guys, that's it. Let me know what you guys think down below. Is it just me? Do you think I missed something listening to it rather than reading it? Was it engrossing and addicting for you? Let me know. Do you think there'll be any other books in this world, in this Monsters of Verity world in the future? Let me know what you guys think. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!